G'day guys, Solid here. Welcome back to another episode of Adventure News for March of 2025. Hope you've all had a great month. Honda look to be updating the CRF300L and CRF300L Rally as it's now known. Triumph have big news. We've also got CCM, the maker of the famous GP450 with a cult following. It's in a bit of financial trouble, so we'll talk about that as well. And we've also got a brand new BMW R12 GS to talk about, which looks very tasty. So let's get into all the news and the updates right now. Let's start off with the CRF300L and 300 Rally, two little dual sports that will always hold a special place in my heart, and they're getting updates for 2025. As is very typical in the dual sport world, those updates are very minor, but I've got to give credit to Honda. At least it's not bold new graphics this year. So we do get some updates that are meaningful that will improve the bike, but it's not groundbreaking updates. The first off is of course the bold new graphics. That's mandatory in the dual sport world. We all know how that goes. We're also getting LED lights. That's straight out of the EasyBook playbook. Of course, any improvement in illumination for those night rides, particularly in bigger countries where wildlife is more prevalent, that is definitely going to help. Now, the big thing is the suspension is getting updated, and I think this is a big deal because if you ask me, the weakest point of the 300 was the suspension when it came to the overall package. It's very soft suspension, particularly if you're a Western sized guy. So the dampening on the front shocks and the rear suspension has been changed. And it's been stiffened up because obviously Honda have heard the criticisms of the suspension being a little too soft for the task. Now, I'm not enough of a suspension expert to tell you whether just stiffening the dampening will improve the overall experience of the 300L off-road, but it definitely is a step in the right direction, and at least it's Honda acknowledging that, yeah, we got it wrong the first time. It does need to be a bit stiffer. So the jury will still be out whether that will really alleviate the problem. What I really would have liked to have seen though, particularly with the front shocks, and this was a problem with the 250L and a lot of other little dual sports, is typically they only put one spring in the front suspension. So that's generally why they feel so soft and so undersprung. So I think Honda could have easily put a second spring in the front shocks, and that really would have helped out. Because the rear, you can always bump up the preload a little bit to get your desired performance. While we've got an improvement, it certainly isn't as good an improvement as I was hoping, but something is better than nothing in my opinion. The new upper shock mount, the rubber mount has been discarded and it's now a bearing instead. This Honda are claiming should improve smoothness, but I think the rub here will be that the bearing is likely to last a lot longer and will improve durability. But let's face it, it's pretty much a nothing burger for most of us. The average person, myself included, I don't think I could tell the difference. One that I do think is going to be pretty handy, particularly in places like here in Australia, and it was a criticism I had of the 300L, and that was its heat and where it directed it from the engine. So the little fan on the radiator blows straight onto your knee. So Honda have addressed that. They've relocated where the radiator fan is placed. And lastly, we've got the bold new graphics to talk about. I actually like the new graphic set, the inclusion of more blue. I think it is a mild improvement over the existing model. Certainly isn't a reason to go out and buy a new one, but if you're looking for one, I think they've made it a little more enticing. This one pops just a little bit more with that dual tone blue added to the color scheme. Big news this month, of course, though, is Triumph and their release of their two enduro models. I spoke about this being a very strong likelihood when they released their MX bikes. And what I was most excited about, of course, was their move to enduro motorcycles. And it looks like they're doing that in a big way and in a very proper way, because they've got Ivan Cervantes and Johnny Walker riding these bikes. And if you follow enduro racing, both of those blokes are about as good as it gets. And they will be heading up Triumph's racing team in the enduro, which is pretty big news. But heading up the team as well is Paul Edmondson. And that guy is a 4-time enduro world champion and knows what he's doing. We will quickly gloss over the biggest specifications with the two Triumphs. And the interesting one, I think, is the 250, because From the spec sheet, this looks like it might be the most powerful 250 in the enduro class. They have managed to get almost 42 horsepower out of this little 250 and 28 Newton meters of torque, which is really impressive when you consider it's also got really great 48mm KYB suspension up front with 300mm of travel, same KYB suspension at the back with 313mm of travel and plenty of adjustment as well. We've also got Brembo brakes, and basically Triumph are going for a real premium feel here. So this is going head to head with the KTMs. And wet weight is 114 kilograms. The 450 is no slouch either. It's making 58 horsepower and 49 Newton meters of torque. It's got the same suspension as the 250 with the same amount of travel and manages to only be 2 kilograms heavier at 116 kilos. Price for the 250 in the US, just shy of $9,800. And the 450 is $10,800. And I think what Triumph is showing is they're really coming to play not only with the personnel that they've hired to head this whole enduro vehicle, but also with the bikes themselves. These are made to compete straight out of the gate. And I think the timing is really fortuitous for Triumph, with KTM showing a lot of weakness with all their financial troubles and customer service troubles going on in the background. Here comes Triumph with an alternative that is very premium and very capable straight out of the gate. And of course, you know where I'm gonna go. We had the MX bikes and I said, if they make MX bikes, they're surely going to do enduro bikes. It's very easy to make one out of the other. Now we're here with the enduro bike. So that means there's only one place left for Triumph to go here, and that is Dual Sports. We've got no indication that they would or that they even have the intention to do so, but it would be really great to see because we're kind of meeting in the middle with Triumphs. We've got adventure bikes and we've got now these enduros. The logical next step is some kind of dual sport. And given that Triumph are doing such a premium effort with their off-road machines, I think it would be really great to see Triumph try their hat at a KTM 690 enduro competitor. Throw the kitchen sink at it, make it lightweight, capable suspension, really good performer, but also durable and reliable. It'd really help reinvigorate the big bore end of the market in the dual sport world. But I'd love to know your thoughts. Are you excited for these enduro bikes? Are you planning on getting one? Do you think Triumph should get into the dual sport world? And if they did, what would you like to see from them? Throw all your thoughts down below. Start it up. Next up, we've got BMW back in the headlines, this time with an R12 GS, but there's a slash in the middle, and this is a very different thing to the Urban GS that we're all familiar with. The Urban GS really had no off-road capability. It looked dirt capable, but it was a road platform. Basically, they threw knobby tires on it and a retro vibe to it to make it look a little dirt capable, but it really had no business going off-road. Whereas this R12 GS actually has some dirt capability. So we've got that same air-cooled boxer twin. It's making 109 horsepower and 115 Newton meters of torque. Now, of course, it's got a 6-speed gearbox and it's got 45mm front forks with compression, rebound, and spring preload adjustment. And it's the same adjustment on the rear suspension as well. Now, what makes this more off-road capable is the fact that it actually has a decent amount of travel. So up front, you've got 210mm, which is slightly more than the Royal Enfield behind me. And you've got 200mm of travel at the back. Now, disappointingly, it is 229 kilos, so this is no featherweight despite it being a pretty stripped back motorcycle. But when you put it in the context of middleweight adventure bikes, it isn't extremely heavy. It's roughly the same as a Tiger 900 Rally. Now, the other big indication that this bike can actually go off-road is the fact that you're getting a 21-inch front wheel. The standard version of the R12 GS gets a 17-inch rear wheel, exactly the same as the Himalayan behind me, but you can get an enduro pack for this bike, which gives you an 18-inch rear wheel, which would really open up a lot of aggressive off-road tires for you. On top of that, you also get more travel out of the suspension with that enduro pack as well. It's not a huge amount, but it equates to about 10mm extra travel. It's got a 15.5 litre tank or 4.1 gallons. I think the biggest downer for me is the weight of this bike at 229 kilograms. That's pretty porky for an off-road machine. But then you do have to take a step back and think, okay, this is more of a scrambler or retro bike paying homage to the R12 GS, the OG adventure bike, rather than actually trying to be the second coming of a BMW HP2 Enduro. So in that, guys, you got to think of it more as competition towards Triumph's 1200 scramblers, where they've got an okay amount of off-road capability, certainly almost as good as an average lukewarm adventure bike, but you're not going to be doing enduro races or any hardcore riding with them. I personally absolutely love the look of this bike. So I'd love to know your thoughts. Have BMW hit the nail on the head with this bike? Obviously being far more off-road capable than the Urban GS, but have they given it enough off-road capability to match also the aesthetics? Do you think it looks good enough? Or would you have loved to have seen just a second coming of the HP2 Enduro with far lighter weight, more capable suspension, and more focus on off-road capability? Let me know in the comments section down below. On the heels of them developing a retro rally bike, it's called Project X. It looks like that project is now put on hold as CCM is suffering some financial problems and are having to lay off workers. Problem for CCM, we've seen KTM get into financial troubles. Harley-Davidson have absolutely taken a beating as well. And I think we're going to see more and more of this moving forward, because I don't know if you've noticed, but the cost of living is getting a little bit out of control. And of course, small companies that make low numbers of bespoke motorcycles that are really for the enthusiast are going to struggle a little bit. I'm hoping they pull through because they've made some fantastic contributions to the motorcycle world. So let's hope they make it through this turbulent time, but it is a little bit disappointing to see that their retro rally bike is going to be on hold until they weather this storm. And until next time, don't forget to stay shiny side up, and I'll see you in the next one.